Lore Together is proud to be part of the Boss Rush Games network. Feel free to find out more at bossrushgames.com/network. Hi, I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife team talk about all the things pertaining to video game storytelling, world building, and characters, because it's what we like to do together. We lore together.
Yep, and this is episode 43. Before we get into the episode, though, if you'd like to contact us, you can do that on Twitter at LoreTogether, on Instagram at LoreTogether, through email at LoreTogether@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so by going to patreon.com/LoreTogether, where you can pay a per-episode pledge to get early access to episodes, mini-episodes, Q&As, and other things we may be doing in the future. So do you have any idea what we're doing this episode?
Today, no. I have ideas for possibly other future episodes, but today I don't know. All I know is that if anybody saw our last live stream, I apparently like Mirror's Edge platforming, but not Mario Brothers platforming.
I think it's because Mirror's Edge has more of a artistic flow
Yes.
to it.
Yes.
It's kind of like a Zen thing you get into, whereas
Yeah.
Mario Brothers is not as it. There is a flow you can get into, but it's not the same type.
Okay. Well, listen to our last episode, and then you can watch our live stream where I didn't fumble nearly as much as I did. So I'm hoping whatever game we're doing this time, I won't fumble as much in the live stream, because the last two.
Well, I did mention in the last live stream that this was going to be a puzzle game.
Well, it's a different kind of fumbling for me then.
I'm not going to get into any real puzzle solutions. We are dipping back into Cyan's wheelhouse, and we're going to be doing Obduction.
Oh, so we're doing their sci-fi version of Myst. Okay. All right. Good to know.
But I'm just going to cover kind of the broader strokes of the world and then some of the races.
Okay.
This is a newish game from Cyan. It only came out a couple years ago.
Right.
I think it was 2016.
I remember you were well, that's more than a couple years ago at this point. That's like 5.
Shut up. Though the Myst remake should be coming out the day we release this to patrons, this episode.
Oh, yeah. That'd be a great way to celebrate. Definitely. I remember when Obduction came out, you were super stoked.
So, I like Myst.
Yeah.
I think Riven is an amazingly realized world in a game.
Yes.
I think Obduction may be my favorite Cyan game, actually, though.
Okay. And so since it's at the top tier and it's younger and it's newer and it's much more approachable for an audience, I can understand wanting to keep some of its secret.
So here's the thing. Portal explains its central gameplay mechanic.
Yes.
Almost immediately.
Immediately. No hesitation. Just right into it.
You understand it, and they introduce little adjustments to that. With a second portal. In Portal 2, they introduce different goos and gels and all this other stuff to extrapolate upon that central gameplay mechanic.
Yeah.
With Obduction, they don't even get to the central gameplay mechanic until you've probably been playing sometimes for hours. Based on how you play and how you think things through. You will not get to the central gameplay mechanic until that point. Until you have already solved 4 or 5 puzzles. And starting to understand the lore and starting to understand the world. Then you get to the central gameplay part.
Well.
And then about 2 or 3 hours later, depending again on how you play, you get the second gameplay, entirely different system. But Obduction is a great way to get that lost and wondering feeling that Myst gave everyone before they kind of knew the lore and had established the world and all this other stuff. And it's kind of a good game to sit down alone or with a friend, significant other, and just...
Or a whole audience on YouTube watching you live stream.
I mean, Hours Played might want to take a look at this one.
Oh, is it a couples game? Really?
So it's not multiplayer, but it's definitely a game that I've seen couples stream together.
So it's a good date night activity, you think?
If you are the type who like to unravel puzzles.
Sure. I don't know.
Like, do you like talking about mysteries or trying to find solutions and stuff? Do you like to, hey, did you see that? Did you see that thing back there? Go back to that thing,
I don't know. I mean, like, I see that in you, Mystic, and I think that that's a good quality that you have. I'm very, there's something that's really strange about me and is not common to humans in general is my ability to stew in the nuance and not feel like I need to solve the mystery sometimes. It's not to say that there would never be a point in time where I'd be really compelled to solve a mystery. And I have been in games where I felt a little bit more compelled than others. But the quietness of a game that's usually made by Cyan is just, it's so peaceful and calm most of the time, even when it's kind of foreboding, like when we were playing Riven, that I kind of I'm okay with not having the solutions or figuring them out. It's just not something that I'm.
Okay, maybe not for everybody.
Yeah,
But I think it's worth a shot.
I think no. I think a lot of people would. I think you're right that a lot of people would have a lot of fun doing that.
The game allows you to discover things more than
One way.
give you that feeling of discovery more than once.
Right.
Kind of like many people played Myst and never got off the island. Once they discover that there's other worlds,
Yeah.
that's a sense of discovery that most games don't really get because they advertise it off on immediately.
Right.
Abduction kind of gets that back again. It's kind of a hard thing I'm trying to propose,
But I think it's also you have a very specific feeling with that kind of world building. And I don't think everybody does.
I'm just going off of the Let's Plays I've seen of people where everyone's like, what just happened?
Well, of course. Yeah, if you're doing it blind and you figure it out,
That's what I'm trying to say. Cyan games are best experienced blind, I think.
No, and that's fair. I mean, I would stop playing them if I played them blind, though, because they're not made for somebody like me. But I'm just saying for myself, I'm a strange person in that regard.
I do recommend avoiding, if you are going to play this at all, avoid using walkthroughs if at all possible.
Right. That's true for any Cyan game that's this puzzle focused. Just don't do the walkthrough the first time if you want the full experience. Yeah.
The game has a built-in photo function.
There will probably be no tonal issues like in Riven, that one puzzle. That was a music puzzle.
That was Myst.
It was Myst?
That was Myst.
Oh, Myst is the one. So there'll be no tonal issues in this one, I'm assuming.
No. There's a math puzzle that some people get stuck on. But it's not too hard. It's not too hard. They do give you a lot of hints to it.
I feel like there's a lot of people that they see math and their eyes glaze over. I just think that's
it's not as bad as we may cover this series eventually. Still Life.
I've heard of this one before.
We've played it.
Yeah.
It's a 3-game series because there's Postmortem, then there's Still Life, and then there's Still Life 2.
Okay.
And in Still Life, there's a recipe you have to make, and it's...
You gotta do the cooking by the book.
By the book, but it's not written like a normal recipe.
Oh, no.
It's written like a math problem, and in like poetic math problem.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's not that bad. So, broadly in Abduction, people get abducted.
Well, I mean, they did kind of put that in the forefront there.
Yeah. The player gets abducted.
Fair. Okay, that's fair.
And you end up in a place called Hunrath.
Hunrath. How do you find out it's called Hunrath? After
There's actually a sign that says, "Welcome to Hunrath."
We've abducted you. Welcome to Hunrath.
And Hunrath is the human settlement. There's 4 settlements. Mm-hmm. Or 4 worlds, 4 settlements, whatever. You travel between them at some point, kind of like you do with ages and everything. This is already mildly spoilery. Some people go in blind. If you're going in blind, this will spoil some stuff. Mm-hmm. But...
Okay, so they've been organized into Hunrath is what that sounds like to me.
And there's nobody around.
Oh.
The only clue you have is a recording saying that we are getting ready. Like, you see, there's a couple recordings around. Basically, if people were not always waiting around for someone to show up. So they
Right.
have a couple recording devices, and you watch a recording that's like, welcome, blah, blah, blah. Go to the
Right.
community center. You
Okay.
go to the community center, and there's a recording that gets interrupted by the person who's recording it and just goes, all right, we're basically, she's taping over a
Right.
recording to say, we're on the verge of a big battle.
Oh,
And
wow.
I don't know what's going to happen. Be careful who you trust.
Oh.
And that's it. That's all the information you have to go on before you have to go explore an adventure.
Oh, thanks. This is exactly what I needed to hear after I was abducted by aliens.
Right.
P.S. You might have found yourself in a war. Oh, great.
Now, there is a really cool thing here in Abduction that they've they're not doing it, as far as I can tell, for the Myst remake, but they
Okay.
did it here, where every person you talk to is a real person that's been videoed. Like, they do the whole
wow.
green screen thing like they did in the original Myst. And it doesn't look great.
Right.
And some of them it makes sense because they're actual recordings, but when you actually talk to a real person,
yeah.
because there are a couple real people you can talk to, you can see like the green screen aspect to it and stuff a little bit.
Oh, okay.
But I did hear one of the reviewers say, I think it's on purpose.
Oh.
I think it's on purpose because that's kind of their nostalgia. Like, haha, remember Myst?
Oh, okay, yeah. I could see that.
Yeah, and the guy who played Cirrus,
Yes.
who was Robin Miller,
Yes.
plays a human in this game.
Okay.
So he came back to play.
That's
I think
funny.
he might have done the soundtrack too. I can't remember.
Right, because Robin decided he didn't want to keep up with
The whole game thing.
the
Yeah.
whole game thing, and then Rand Miller was like, "Oh no, that's cool."
Now, I don't
keep
think
it up."
Rand plays a person in this game.
Right.
He may be one of the humans, and I just haven't gone through them all yet. But I don't know if he is. So through the course of all of this, you eventually realize that the whole settlement has been kind of like locked up, powered down, and you have to kind of undo all of that.
Oh wow.
And I'm not going to explain how you undo all of that because that's all puzzle.
Yeah.
And you do have a little bit of help. There's a person you can talk to who will give you annoyed guidance.
Annoyed guy. Okay, you're bothering them.
And annoying guidance because he's not very guideful. Let's just go through the races, and we'll uncover a few little things as we go.
Okay.
So, obviously, one of the races is humans.
Yeah. Are we the special one, like always?
No,
Okay, that's good.
no. There's a little bit. Every race contributes something to the overarching world, and there's 70 humans who have been abducted,
Oh wow.
and they're from all different times and places on Earth. We know all the way from 1870 up to 2042.
Interesting. Huh. Okay.
And I'm not quite sure when the player character is from. That's never said.
That might be intentional.
It is. It's Cyan. They like that put yourself in the character's shoes type thing.
Right.
So Houndroth is basically an old western mining town.
Interesting.
And in the middle of the town, in the middle of all the settlements, so each race has its own settlement, in the middle of the settlement is this tree. And the tree is linked to the entire ecosystem of the settlement. How these trees were planted or anything, nobody knows.
Why do I feel like this is suddenly like Avatar?
It's
The
not
James Cameron Avatar.
Not quite like that. Every so often, the tree will drop a seed. This happens roughly at regular intervals, about every 400 days. Mm-hmm. And that seed has a sibling seed in another part of the universe. And they kind of can switch.
And go vloop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another type of seed, there's two types of seeds we're going to cover. And the other type of seed are collector seeds. That's kind of what brings people here. That's what does the abducting.
Okay, and collectors, of course, makes me think of the
Mass Effect.
Yes, the collectors. Yeah,
Nothing like that.
awesome.
But a collector seed is the one that people will see at the beginning of the game.
Okay.
So, And I think that's the only one you see. But through these seeds and other ways of traveling between these settlements, humans have met other races.
Okay.
3 in particular.
Okay.
And the first we're going to talk about are the Arai.
Awry. Like they've gone awry.
Arai.
Okay.
And they are large beetle-like insects.
Nice. It's just like the book Metamorphosis, where suddenly he woke up and suddenly he was a beetle.
Actually, it's interesting you mentioned metamorphosis because they come in 3 distinct varieties.
Interesting.
Basically 3 different parts of their
Life cycle?
life cycle almost. So you have a barnacle, which is like an egg type thing.
Okay.
Then you have the beetle, and then you have the polyarch, which is kind of weird.
The
I
polyarch?
think you see one of those.
What is the poly? Okay, so
Basically, it's a more advanced beetle that's kind of stationary.
they only get to move through one of their 3 sections of life. Now, is there? Did they spend most of their life as a beetle, and then it's not until near the end of their life they're like, I'm frozen in place. I am a polyarch. I've seen everything I need to see.
I don't actually know that.
Okay, well,
Because, so here's the interesting thing about this is you're not given like a codex
right.
that is omniscient and can tell you everything. You are given in world, somebody has met the Arai and has documented stuff.
Okay. So, like many other Cyan games, you're learning things through notebooks
Yes.
and in turn in puzzles.
Yeah. In fact, in the book where you learn about the races, under each race, they have, if you would like to know more, talk to blah. This person.
Would you like to know more?
Yeah. So there's like somebody who has taken the time to investigate and learn about the other races.
Okay.
For each race. Like each race has their specialist when it comes to things.
Do the humans have a specialist?
I don't know. We never actually read anything from the other races themselves.
Oh, I would just like the idea that Irea's being like, I feel sorry for the humans and their lack of protective covering over their organs. I imagine it makes day-to-day life quite cumbersome.
Yeah. Although the morphology of all these different versions of Arai are drastically different from a human, their internal systems basically use all the same atmospheric components and nutrients that we do.
Okay.
Which is handy.
Right. So very much our standard idea of what is considered a habitable zone and what are
Works for them
considered
too.
standard elements is the same.
That's roughly the same for all the races, actually.
Okay. That makes somewhat logical sense.
Yeah. In their barnacle stage, the Arai, I'm actually cribbing straight from the game's information here. This is all coming from 2 books in the game, and there's tons of them.
Ooh.
And just like all Cyan games, there's some documentation you can find that is just not necessary.
I feel like Bethesda does this too. Like
Bethesda does it to a different degree and for a different purpose.
right.
Well, actually, no, for the same purpose, but Cyan is building a structured narrative that is, for the most part, linear. You cannot do things out of order too much.
Right.
Whereas Bethesda is, we need to make a world for you to explore in any direction.
Exactly. It's the difference of wanting to ride a snake versus dance with an octopus.
Okay.
What? Wait, what did I say
That's
was
just an
wrong?
interesting mental image, that's all. In their barnacle stage, the Arai are completely immobile. They kind of sit there glowing on rocks.
Oh, okay.
They actually look really cool, too. And they stay in this egg-like developmental stage seemingly indefinitely.
Oh.
They have to be near a polyarch and have been fertilized by a beetle to hatch.
So who's laying these eggs? Other beetles?
Apparently, yeah.
Okay.
Beetles or polyarchs. The polyarchs are, I think, in an egg, if I remember correctly, or not. They're immobile also, and I don't remember if they themselves lay the eggs or if all I remember is the beetles. No, the barnacles need to be in a certain area of a polyarch. Again,
You needed to construct more pylons.
I will get to why this is kind of hard to understand in this regard in a moment, because we are going to talk about communication.
Yeah, that was going to be my assumption, is that a lot of this is just observing rather than actually hearing
Yeah.
about it.
So the beetles are the eyes and ears, hands and feet. They basically are the only one. They kind of can go around, look around, interact with things.
Right.
The polyarchs just are there.
Right.
But they have a minimal nervous system. They're essentially just sensory extensions of the polyarchs. Basically, they kind of, it's like I would guess a shared consciousness. That's me extrapolating at that point.
That sounds possible, or if it's just a hive mind mentality.
Yeah. They are able to execute simple commands, but apparently have very little in the way of individual sentience.
But collective sentience, then.
No, the polyarchs are sentient individually.
So you have to earn. You essentially
Evolve to sentience.
You grow into sentience. It sounds like.
The Uri polyarchs are the intelligence and consciousness of the species. Although it was obvious that there was intelligence behind the species, it wasn't until one of the humans, I'm not going to give names, began spending time in close proximity that they kind of started to understand.
Okay.
The Uri species survived in their world, which you do travel to.
Yeah.
And it's a world. It's kind of a cool world. There's a lot of machinery there, but it's not theirs.
Right. Right.
Because they didn't build it.
Okay.
Other people came to their world and was using the Uri for different purposes.
Oh, weird.
So, like, you'll go there and you'll find temples to the Uri. Because people would, like, one species worship them. Another species use them as bait for other creatures. Like, there's...
Yikes.
Yeah, so, like, other species have come through and used them for different reasons.
Oh, that's really tragic and sad.
None of the stages of the Uri morphology have any ability to vocalize. They can't talk.
Well,
They can kind of... They can buzz.
Right. They can't speak a language, so to speak.
Right.
But they might have their own language.
And the barnacles kind of flash.
Okay. So maybe they're communicating with some luminescence of some sort.
Yeah, and of course you have the beetles and the polyarchs kind of work off each other because the beetles can work with whatever the polyarchs need, whatever. And it's actually kind of cool with the barnacles. Their color depends on what they're attached to.
Oh.
So you can see them change colors, as they climb a wall because the wall behind it is different materials.
Oh, that's very cool.
And there's actually a couple places in some of the locations where you can see areas that don't match anywhere else in the game, and it's like, where did those come from? And I'm wondering if Cyan was figuring out maybe there was going to be a sequel.
Ooh.
But they're not working on Obduction. They're working on a new game called Firmament. So
Firmament. Okay, well, we'll probably cover that in a couple of years or so.
yeah, it's not even out yet. So eventually, by this one human sitting there and just watching and paying attention and basically just spending large amounts of time with the polyarchs and not quite even knowing that the polyarchs were really sentient, but just sitting there and just spending the time.
Yeah.
Kind of started to realize a pattern and realize that there were messages coming from the polyarchs.
Oh, okay.
And the polyarchs had been trying an attempt to communicate this whole time as well, but they had no way of really communicating, so they were experimenting on their own, trying to figure out what would communicate also.
Well, you mean to assume that every species would have some equivalence of human written language,
Yeah.
as well as being able to vocalize. It's just a little presumptuous.
Well, the interesting thing is that that the polyarchs and the beetles both have like the ability to hear human vocal frequency.
Yeah.
So they can hear us and they can understand simple phrases, but they have no ability to communicate back except for through their own methods, which this human was able to figure out, but we never actually find out what it is. It just labels it as extrasensory transmission.
Extrasensory. So that sounds like telepathy of some sort.
Or
yeah. Or there's an outside sense that is heightened.
I mean, it could be through color. It could be through...
Could be through color. It could be through smell.
Yeah. So we don't know that. And of course, we're just told, if you want to know more, contact this person.
Would you like to know more? I'm going to keep referencing that movie because I can't stop.
I'm sorry? I mean, it's an okay movie, but that's Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers is a good movie.
Yes, but I don't do the whole bug thing. They creep me out, so it knocks it down a few bars in my...
I think that's the whole reason why they're bugs.
Yeah, I know.
Never mind. I'm not even going to get into whole, like, it's an allegory for fascism.
Oh, no, I know it
here,
is.
But
I can appreciate that message without liking the movie itself.
Right. That's fair. That's fair.
So the next race we're going to talk about is the Mofang, which is actually the first species that we met.
Okay.
And unfortunately, all the names we know, like the Arai, the Mofang, the next one, we don't know if those are their actual names.
Okay.
Because they were named by humans, including their worlds were named by humans. It's basically what the humans call them.
Right.
The Mofang, though, actually, we do have some understanding of language with them. Well, we'll touch on that in a minute. But the Mofang are very good at their ability to imitate.
So do they look like humans when we first
They don't look
them?
like humans, but they're able to kind of imitate the way humans talk, move, and, gestures and stuff.
Okay. What do they look like, though?
I'd say their closest they would be mostly analogous to greys, but red.
So they're bright red, hairless skinned, shorter than us?
Yeah. Kind of gaunt.
Do they have
Still humanoid.
big eyes?
Yes.
So big black eyes, like our typical UFO
I don't remember off the top of my head.
alien thing?
The sketch you see of them is black and white, so it's kind of hard to say.
Okay.
You see one or two of them, but I don't remember off the top of my head if they were black eyes or not.
Okay.
I think they are. It's been a while since I played this one, but I've played it numerous times.
Okay.
And for a while, though, you may remember I was watching a lot of Let's Plays and reactions of this one.
Yes, I do. I do remember that.
The name for the as I just touched on, we don't know the name for the Mofang because their language is completely unpronounceable by humans.
Okay.
So, but communication with the Mofang is primarily accomplished by them learning human languages.
Wow. Okay.
So they've learned our languages enough to be able to communicate.
Do we in the game figure out how they've learned it? Was it just through them?
Not entirely, no.
Okay.
We do see them attempt to use it once in a while.
Okay.
Yeah. They've been able to learn almost every human language represented in Hunrath enough to provide functional, if rudimentary, communication. And there's a bunch of languages in Hunrath. In fact, there's a recording you can see from, like, a welcome message, and it goes through, like, a bunch of different languages, including Dunny.
Oh, that's funny.
So they look basically humanoid for all intents and purposes, head, arms, feet.
Right.
All that stuff. Mouth, eyes, nostrils. Minimal body hair and kind of like a raised spine. So they have like spiky spine. They're pretty frail. And they're very thin and lightweight.
Oh, okay. So they're lithe.
Yeah. And ample cranial space with a substantial brain, although internal investigation has not been possible.
Well, no, because that sounds like
Autopsy on a...
The Fox special I watched when I was a kid of a very fake alien autopsy.
And they are more advanced than humans in terms of technology.
Okay.
In fact, we use their technology for a lot of stuff in Hunrath.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have like holography.
Oh, right.
Like holography with...
Like a physical interface?
Yeah. Well, no, like holography that you could make structure with it. Like it would feel real.
So kind of like a Star Trek hologram.
Yeah.
To that extent, where
yeah.
Even though it's just light, that somehow tricks the photons into feeling like an actual physical structure.
Yeah, but without needing the whole room. You just need a small little thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm trying not to give away too much, because there are some puzzles that revolve around it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I stay ignorant at this time.
So as I said, they kind of learned our languages pretty quickly. And they're able to mimic words, phrases, and all these different languages stuff, but they're terrible at learning grammar.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
they tried to learn all the different languages at once.
Right. And the nouns are always much easier to understand than the verbs
Yeah.
and the pronouns. And yeah, there's just too much stuff going on there. The order of operations.
Yeah. So when they do talk, it's always really kind of stilted and weird. Mm-hmm. So then again, there's also a couple human characters who have kind of stilted and weird dialect, and that may be because they're trying to use either a secondary language,
Right.
or, as I said, they're from a different time period entirely.
Exact. Well, but 1870 to 2042.
That's the ones that I know of.
Okay. But but yeah,
that's guessing, because
if you're doing centuries even before that.
Right. There's one character that we know is from 1870. There's one character written down in a book who is from 2042.
Okay.
Beyond those two, I mean, there's obviously a bunch between there. One of them is from 1983. One is from, whatever. Beyond those two extremes that I do know of, there may be more that are just not written down.
Okay. But I think my thing is that the structure, the grammar would
Roughly
still be roughly the same.
But because they get the grammar well enough to kind of get across the base idea of what they're trying to say, so the humans at Hunrath have never really tried to learn anything about their language.
Right. There's no incentive to.
Right. The last race we'll talk about is the Valine.
That already sounds ominous.
Yeah. They've actually communicated with the Arai for years.
Okay.
Yeah. But I do not believe they're one of the species that we reference with the Arai where they're using them for hunting or whatever.
Right.
But the Valine are kind of interesting compared to all the other races in that they're a spacefaring race.
Oh, wow. But they're still getting abducted by this.
Yes.
Whatever force.
So the way that they do things is they get onto basically it's not a generation ship, but it'd be like suspended animation ship, I guess.
Okay.
And they leave a colony and their ship just goes until it finds another suitable planet. They colonize that one.
Oh, wow.
Until either the resources are done or until they have to leave for whatever reason, or it's time, or, something there doesn't work for them or whatever. And then they leave again. During one of these stops is when they got abducted. Like groups of them got abducted. So it's just this interesting idea of all these other races. Humans are spacefaring, quote unquote.
Yeah,
the Mofang, we don't know if they're spacefaring, as far as I know. The Arai are not, because they don't have that technical ability. Mm-hmm. But the Valine are definitely spacefaring to the point that they are literally hopping planets.
Right. And the ones that have been abducted are being abducted from one certain point of their travels.
Yeah. And they are large.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Quote, large and imposing frame.
Are they also humanoid shaped?
They're roughly humanoid shaped, except they have 4 arms. They have like 2 big ones and 2 tiny ones.
Oh my gosh. For a moment, I was imagining it was like Mortal Kombat with the...
Goro with the Shokan.
Yes. But then you said the 2 little arms. So they've got little T-Rex arms, and then they've got their big...
in the art, it's great because they have like these giant arms that are hanging down. You see these tiny 2 little arms just kind of tucked up under the...
Oh my gosh. Why does that sound...
But they look huge. They look like Shale. Remember Shale from Dragon Age?
Yes.
They look like Shale in a weird... in like that... in terms of frame. Like in terms of like big...
Okay. Now, so they're humanoid in the sense that they at least have the shoulder, hip.
Mm-hmm. And they have, eyes, nose, mouth.
But they just happen to have these huge arms with these tiny little arms underneath. But then they have just 2 legs and all of that. So that's normal.
Also, they are probably, like, the Arai were hard to understand communication-wise. The Valine, harder for a different reason. In that this is kind of interesting that this is what I thought of when I read this before I had met one in game, because you do meet all these races. Tell me what you think of when you hear this. They produce sounds using 2 large reed-like structures inside opposite sides of their heads. The vibrations generated are channeled into resonance chambers in their skulls, where they are combined into complex low frequency and dual tone.
Okay, this sounds like when I was a kid, there were those two-legged herbivore dinosaurs that had those crests.
The nuchal crests.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that was one of the theories as to why they had them.
Yeah.
So I assume it's something like that.
So I didn't think of that when I read that. What I read was, we speak through through slight movements and pheromone like that.
Oh, it was like an elk.
Even though it's not it's not the same, but for some reason that's where my brain went.
The low frequency when it comes to the low tone,
Yeah.
monotone voice of the Elcor, it makes you think of that. I could see that.
So this low frequency bitonal sounds, it was like really hard for humans to hear, and it's kind of hard to hear even when you meet them in game.
I could, unfortunately, part of the juvenile part of me just keeps on thinking of like a human meets them and they accidentally hit the brown note. And you're like,
Ooh.
oh,
That's bad.
you can Google that, kids. You can Google that. That's not completely dangerous.
This is interesting. So because they speak in low frequency,
Yeah,
they were unable to hear most of the human range of noise.
that makes sense. Yeah.
So the ability to communicate ended up being all technological based, and the Valine are as technological as the Mofang.
Oh, okay.
And so because they're so technological, they've actually created consoles. Like the Mofang are able to communicate well enough that people can, like, they can tell you, here's how you use this tech.
Right.
The Valine are not that able to communicate, at least not at first. And so they created a basic console that people could interact with that's based on their numbering system. That's where the math comes in. So you have to understand their numbering system to use their
Now
stuff.
here's my question. Are they
Yeah.
using base 10 math?
No.
And that's where I'm going to die. I understand the concept of base 2 versus base 10 and stuff like that. But it's just...
This one's not too hard. A minor spoiler for the puzzle here, but they do blatantly tell you that it is base 4.
Okay. It's just...
There's literally a worksheet in the game.
It's just when you're taught base 10 math your entire life that it's just...
It's not super hard to adjust down. Base 2 is 0, 1. Well, now you're done.
Yeah.
Because 2 is the next number, and you can't go more than 2 digits. So 0, 1. So now you have to roll over. So now that's your 1. That's 10. You know, basically it helps to think of it in binary almost.
Right.
And base 4 is you can have 0, 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
Once you get to a number 4, you roll over to the next digit.
Right.
So when you start thinking of it in terms of you roll over to the next digit, it becomes a little easier to understand. Like 1 0 in base 4 is 4 in base 10.
Right. It's just one of those things where it just takes you such a long time. It took me a while to figure it out. It actually, we have one of our friends actually was explaining how you can count in binary and how he's, that's something that's a cool trick to teach kids who are learning how to program. But so it took me a while, and then I finally understood what he was getting at. But still, I'm in my 30s and I've been doing base 10 math all my life.
If you get to the point where you have to understand base 4 numbering for this game, or you just want to understand base 4 numbering, one of the walkthroughs I did was by a guy on YouTube who goes under After Work Gaming. He just does streams after work, and he actually went through when he got to this point and explained base 4 and then explained how the numbers in the game work.
Okay, cool.
So that's a spoiler, but not a major one,
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, one that's going to leave you less frustrated in the long run.
So like I said, we had problems communicating because they speak in a different way entirely.
Yes.
And a different frequency. But a couple little words of the Valine and a couple little words of human are in the same range. So there is we can pick up a couple words, they can pick up a couple words.
Interesting.
So, but it's like everyone has to speak slow and distinctly.
Oh, wow.
Like when you don't understand somebody, everyone's first inclination is, I must speak slower and louder. That's going to help.
The bad Chris Tucker joke. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? That kind of thing.
Which I did.
Yes.
If you remember, we went to a little place that we were trying to get something. I was trying to get a milkshake, and I kept saying milkshake, and they're like, and they spoke Spanish and didn't speak English.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know how to say milkshake, and I kept pointing, and they kept looking, but of course it's a menu, so there's a ton of stuff.
And luckily, everybody was super patient and everything. And finally, Mystic just did Google Translate. And it was so funny. I can't even remember what the word for milkshake in Spanish was.
But they just looked at each other, like nodded and goes, yeah.
Yeah. And they totally got it. And then they were like, okay, which flavor? Like, of course, in Spanish. And that's easier to figure out.
Yeah.
You know.
It was... I love technology, but I was not prepped for that.
That's why.
But yeah, I started doing the slower and louder. Like that's gonna help you understand a language you don't speak. Yeah, because I think
the thing is, your brain goes to the first, like, oh, they can't hear. They can't. When you think somebody can't understand you, your first instinct is that they can't hear you, and so you immediately start doing that. But in actuality, they can hear you just fine. They just can't understand what you're saying. So.
Yeah.
That I can see how people do that all the time.
Oh, I missed a note actually here. To go back to the Valine appearance, actually, they are 9 feet tall.
Whoa. Whoa.
I said they were big.
Yeah.
And everything that you do, they control their vocalizations. All their tech is controlled by their vocalizations, which is why they've built these control panels for people who don't speak their language to use.
It sounds like if you're going to be using a language that involves vocal intonation, then they would be the race who would know how to have an actual translator, like a universal translator.
Right. I've glossed over a lot of stuff already because, of course, when it comes to Cyan games, you could explain the whole thing in 2 minutes.
Right.
For the most part, because the game is the puzzle.
Right.
Is the understanding.
Right.
But there is kind of this interesting aspect of the fact that all these humans and all these races do kind of have enemies and allies amongst each other.
Okay.
And they do all seem to have people within them who just want to learn and have accepted the fact. There are people who have not accepted they're stuck here.
Right.
And there are people who are accepting that they're stuck here and are willing to learn.
Right, exactly.
And it's kind of interesting to see how those two play off each other. And it does actually impact, like all Cyan games, there's an ending. There's one thing, one variable that changes the ending from good to bad.
Oh, wow.
So one choice.
Oh, no.
Luckily, unlike other games, this one you can change before as soon as the ending is starting, you can go change this.
Okay.
Like, before you initiate that final cutscene. So it's not like 10 hours ago you made this choice and you can't change it. You know, it's not like
good.
that.
Yeah.
So I think I'm done. Next episode, I'm going to annoy you again, though.
What? Why is that? Is it another thing you're going to fanboy over?
No. It's a game I haven't played yet, actually.
Oh.
But the descriptor I saw for it...
is platformer?
Mentioned stealth.
Oh, table flip. Table flip.
I have not played it yet, though.
Okay. But things we have played. First of all, so... the Thursday that this releases for patrons, we will have a live stream of Alpha Protocol.
Oh, yes. Part 3, hopefully without audio problems this time.
Without audio problems this time. Or waterboarding jokes, which...
oh, that came out of nowhere.
That was really awful, and oh my God, is it a game of the time? And then the Thursday after this show releases to the public, I will be live streaming Obduction, and, you know... probably getting Mystic to help me figure out the puzzles because I'm not a puzzle game person, and it's just because my brain thinks so differently than a lot of the people who create these puzzles. I think you'll be okay
with this one.
We'll see, but I'm not a puzzle game person. My brain just doesn't go like. I think the problem is that I'm much more of a social game person, so I think of the puzzles very differently Not even necessarily that there's social answers, but just approach it. And they're like, okay, there's A, B, and C. And then I say, okay, the answer is 2. And they're like, wait, what? That's just what happens.
There are so many, so I do have plans for what's going to come after the next episode as well. This is the first. I usually don't have this far in advance planned. We will touch on an MMO. Okay. And by then, I think we're going to be into October.
Woo!
So we're going to have to do... I have 2 horror horror, quote-unquote, games that we might do. Or I may leave you a space to cover a horror game if you want to.
No.
No? Okay, so I'll go.
I have things to do up to the beginning of October, so I can't.
Okay.
But I may be able to take the reins later on in the fall winter season for us. Anyway.
Yeah, you haven't covered a Dragon Age in a while.
Yeah, I got ideas. I got ideas of what I can do.
Another essay on some king.
Don't tempt me. I will do it. I will. But in the meantime, feel free to chat about what you thought about this in the Discord if you've played Obduction, or add us on Twitter, email us at our Gmail. But I think we're ready to wrap this up, and we want to thank you so much for listening, and
thank you for listening and
hearing Mystic gush.
Sorry for the waffly ramble.
No, don't be sorry. It's a podcast. We're allowed to waffly ramble. There are worse, less intelligent, less interesting people waffling and rambling right now who get paid more to do it, by the way. So thank you.
If you'd like to get us up to that level, though,
yes,
check out our Patreon.
And thank you for listening and being entertained by our waffling and our rambling.
Thank you very much.
We heart you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.